Dragon Table, I'll be going over a tutorial on how to play Seven Wonders. It's a game for 2 to 7 people. It takes about a half an hour. The more people you have playing that don't know how to play the game, the longer it takes. But it's generally not too long of a game, particularly if people catch on to how the card drafting mechanic works pretty quickly. I was thinking about not doing Seven Wonders because there's a lot of information about the game out there already. But I thought, hey, it's my channel, I'm going to do what I want, and I want to do Seven Wonders. So let's take a look. This is Seven Wonders set up for a 4-player game. Everyone gets a player board that represents one of the ancient cities. I have Alexandria. We've also got Babylon, Ephesus, and Giza out. Each player board has a side A and a side B. When you're first playing the game, you should play with side A, just because it's simpler, but you can also play with side B. Side B can sometimes be a little bit more complicated, but they're also equally balanced, so you can have some people playing with side A, some people playing with side B, and it's not going to make a difference in the game, like in the balance of the game. It'll work out just fine. I've got some military points over here, some of which are positive and some of which are negative. I will come to those later. Got some coins. Everyone starts with 3 coins. Everyone is also dealt 7 cards from the first age, and on each card it says +3, +4, +5, +6, or +7. So depending on the number of players you have in the game, those are the cards that you're going to use. If you're playing a 4-player game like this, then I will pick all of the cards that I will deal out all of the cards that have a +3 or a +4 on them. Hi, dog. That's dog number 1 walking through the set. Bye, dog. No matter what, there's always the right number of cards to deal 7 to each player to start with, and they are obviously face down. In order to choose who gets which city, you may have people who want to play a certain city, and that's fine if you want to let them choose a city, or you can use these city randomizer cards where you shuffle them up and deal them out, and then they get to choose which city they get. You can even use the A and B randomizer by mixing the cards around, flipping them upside down, and whichever card they're dealt, that letter face up is the side that they have to play. So you can use these if you want, but you don't have to. I've got my decks for age 2 and age 3 ready to go for when we get to those ages. I also have a score sheet for the end of the game. There are a lot of different things that score at the end, so sometimes it's easier just to write them down. That's why they give you this big, huge stack of note cards that even my dog, who is walking through the set, could write on. So now we get to how the game is actually played. And the first thing that I want to do is zoom in on a player board so you can see what it looks like, and I can explain some things that show up on a player board. We're also going to take a close-up look at some of the cards as well. So this is the Alexandria board. To start with, if you have the Alexandria board, you get glass. And that is a resource that you'll get 1 of each turn in order to build things, which are represented in the form of cards. These cards take different resources to build. Some of the cards don't take any resources. The other thing that you're going to be building, in addition to just what's on the cards, is you're going to try to be building your wonders, which are represented by these 3 slots at the bottom of your player board. In order to build a wonder, you have to sacrifice a card. So in other words, you would take a card that you're not going to build, and you would slide it underneath, face down, to show that you've built that wonder. In order to build a wonder, you have to have the resources that are shown on the left side. For instance, my first wonder takes 2 stone to build, and once I've built it, I'll have 3 victory points at the end of the game. If I build my second wonder, that takes 2 ore, and the resulting reward from doing that means that each turn I could choose either a clay, an ore, a wood, or a stone as one of my resources for that turn. To build my third wonder, I need 2 glass, and I would get 7 victory points at the end of the game. These are usually pretty valuable. You don't want to forget about building your wonders. So when you're choosing which cards you're going to build each turn, you want to think about making sure that you're going to have the resources that you need in order to build your wonder. For instance, I know I'm going to need stone, ore, and glass. There are some cities with wonders that have similar materials for all of the different structures that need to be built. It makes it a little bit easier than this one, but they also generally need more of them. Here's actually Babylon is an example of that, because you need brick for the first wonder, and you also need brick for the third wonder, but you need 4 brick for the third wonder. So you're going to be having to get a lot more of that resource. So now let's look at some of the cards that I've been dealt to see what my choices might be for building during this first age. So this card costs 1 coin to build. So this is the cost of building the card up in the top left corner. And this is the name of the card. The name of the card is Excavation. Once it's built, I can have either a stone or a brick that turn to use to build something else. This is a guard tower. This costs 1 brick to build, and it will give you 1 military strength. At the end of each age, you have to compare your military strength to that of your neighbors. If you have more, you get points. If you have less, you lose points, based on which age it's in. This is a Pawnshop. This costs 0 to build, and it just gives you 3 victory points at the end of the game. Doesn't give you anything else. Here's a Glassworks. Now I already have some glass, but I know that I need glass in the future, so I probably wouldn't build it right away because I don't really need 2 glass right off the top, but I would certainly think about it for later in the game. This does not cost anything to build. Here's another guard tower. This is what you'll run into when you have multiple people. If you have more than 3 people playing the game, if you have 4, 5, 6, or 7, you will have multiple versions of the same card in the deck. This one's a little bit more interesting. This is the Apothecary, and it costs 1 scroll or 1 loom to build. That's a loom symbol. And this is I believe that they're called either knowledge or technology cards. And it has a symbol up at the top. This is I believe it's supposed to be a protractor, but or a sextant or something. What you try to do with these cards is you try to collect the same symbol, because the more you have of the same symbol, the more points you'll get at the end of the game. Now, you'll also notice on this card down in the bottom right corner, it has the word stables and it has the word dispensary on it. That means if you've already built the Apothecary, that you can build the stables or the dispensary for free. And it will also say that on those cards, so that you'll always generally remember. You just have to remember that you've built the Apothecary, so you can build a stables or dispensary for free. And that's something to think about when you're deciding which cards to build, because after you choose 1 card, you pass to the person next to you. This last card is the Marketplace. Again, this costs nothing to build, and what it means is that you can get glass, loom, or a scroll from the person next to you for only 1 coin, when normally it would cost 2 coins. You can buy goods from the people next to you as long as they have them for 2 coins apiece, and they can't stop you from doing that. But having a marketplace, or there are some other cards that do similar things that let you have access to different goods for less than the cost of 2, is very helpful. And this is nice because it goes either direction. So either the person on my left or the person on my right, I could get these things from for only 1 coin each. Okay, so now how does the game actually play? Well, everyone at the same time is going to pick up the cards, and they're going to choose one that they want to build. And you look at the resource that for the very first round, you look at the resource that you have. So I only have glass. I could only build something that takes glass, or I could build something that takes money. And you choose which card you're going to build. And once you've chosen the card that you're going to build, you place it face down in front of you or face down on your player board. And then depending on the age that it is, you're going to either pass your deck or your hand to the player on the left or the player on the right. During the first age, you go clockwise, and it shows it right here, clockwise symbol. So I would pass these to this player. So then he does the same thing. He's going to choose a card, and he has brick right there. And he also needs brick to build his first wonder. But remember, sometimes you can get resources from the people next to you, so you want to be looking at that as well. And you want to diversify some. I mean, he is going to need quite a bit of brick in the future, but you don't want to get too heavily loaded on one resource. So he chooses a card and face down, and then so generally this happens faster during the game when you're playing with other people because this is all happening at the same time. So this player has a loom, or not a loom. He has a scroll, and then he passes to the player on the left. And this last guy, he's got stone. And he needs stone and wood in order to build his wonders. He's going to do that, and then he'll pass to me. So once everyone has finished choosing the card they're going to play, everybody flips over their card and plays it. Now, I chose one that costs 1 coin, so I'm going to pay a coin to the pot, and I'm going to build excavation. Now, all of your resource building cards are going to go over here. That way you're going to end up with a stack, basically, of cards where you know you can always look to see which resources you're producing each turn. So now, on each turn, I can choose either a stone or a brick in addition to my glass in order to build something. This person chose a lumber yard, which costs 0, so he just puts that right here, and now he can also choose wood during his turn. This person chose the East Trading Post, and that costs, or it doesn't cost anything. And it means that he can buy good. This is actually works out well for him since he chose wood. He can buy brick or clay, whatever you want to call it, brick, stone, wood, or ore from the player to his right, to the east, for only 1 coin instead of 2. So he's going to play that, and he's just going to put that right up on top of his board. And then any other yellow cards that he built they're going to stack. Now, since he built the East Trading Post, down here in the bottom right corner, this says Forum. That means that he can build a forum for free. Now let's see what he chose. He chose the West Trading Post, so he can buy from me for 1 coin, brick, stone, wood, or ore. Now, if someone chooses to buy a resource from you for that turn, it does not mean that you don't have access to it. For instance, if this person decided to pay him 1 coin to use a wood, this person can still use a wood that turn. So it does not affect the total that you have available to you for that turn. It just affects what's available to the people that are next to you. There's not like a resolute number. It just means that there's 1 available to him, there's 1 available to him, there's 1 available to me. Unless you have other cards. So now you would go, so at this point in the game, unless you know the game really well, you don't know the cards that are out there. Especially, well, in a 7-player game, you're going to have a lot of duplicate cards, but you'll at least have had a good glimpse and an idea of what kind of cards are there. The only cards that I'm familiar with the cards that are in the game. I kind of know what's out there, but I don't know where they are. I know where these cards are. I know what's in this hand, but I don't know what's in that hand. I don't know what's in that hand, and I don't know what's in the hand that I'm about to pick up. So it's an interesting card drafting mechanic that you use to build up your city. So we're going to continue doing that. until we get to the end of the first age. Okay, so I've done a couple more rounds and we've gotten to this guy, and he is actually going to take advantage of the resources that he has to build his first wonder. And he's going to do that because one of the cards that he had in his hand was worth 2 points, and if he builds his first wonder, it's worth 3 points. So it's a little bit more, and then he can get started down the road because you can't build your second or third wonder until you've built your first wonder. So what he does is he has 2 stone, which is what he needs for his first wonder, and he's just going to slip this card upside down. And normally you wouldn't show it to everybody. I'm just showing it to you so you understand why he chose this one to use. Your other option is to choose one that maybe somebody else needs and you don't need. That's definitely later in the game you can do that. So he does that, and he's got his first wonder built. Doesn't give him any benefits during the game, but he'll get 3 points at the end of the game. Let's keep going. Okay, we have come to the end of the first age. You'll notice what I did, maybe. It was in super fast motion, so I don't know if you saw it. But the very last card, everybody had at the very end 2 cards they could choose from. One of which got built, and the other which I threw into a pile in the middle. That's because the last card gets discarded. So, don't forget, when you're getting down to maybe the last 3 or 4 cards, that the very last card in your hand, whichever hand it is that you end up getting, is going to be discarded. So you're not going to be able to build, if there are, say, 3 cards left in each hand, you're not going to be able to build 3 more times, you're going to be able to build 2 more times. Important to keep that in mind, so these get discarded. So now, the only thing that we do to settle up, kind of, at the end of the round, is compare military strength. And I think every single one of us has 1 military strength. I have 1, he's got 1, he's got 1, he's got 1. That means it's an even wash. Nobody gets any points, nobody loses any points. We've all stayed even in the military strength basis. This is a little close here. I'm gonna move his stuff down a little bit. It does take up a little bit of room to spread the card, more room than you would think when you get a bunch of cards that you have to spread out. I'll move my stuff over a little bit. I also have it condensed so that it fits on the video screen. If you were playing this on the full table, it wouldn't be an issue. Dog number 2 has entered the set. Clear the set. I'm going to train my dogs clear the set and see if they figure that out. So that's the only thing that you do at the end of an age. You discard the last card and you settle up your military differences. Now, let's say I didn't have this military card, just for instance. Then these 2 people are going to benefit from it. During the first age, they would each get 1 victory point for having more military than me. And I would get -2 for having less military than 2 of my neighbors. He's not going to affect me because he's not my neighbor. So it's only the people that are right next to you. And that's how you settle up the military conflict. Now, during the second age, it's always -1 if you have less. If you have more, during the first age you get +1, during the second age you get +3, and during the third age you get +5. But other than that, it's always -1 if you have less than the people next to you. So it is important to have some military strength during the game, just so you don't end up losing unnecessary points because of it. So now what would happen is I would deal out the age 2 cards, and everyone would get 7, and we go around, we do the same thing. The age 2 cards are going to be a little bit different. They're going to have a little bit more, there's going to be less of these production type cards in them, and there are going to be more point scoring cards. There are going to be more commerce cards, which are yellow, some things like that. In the third age, you have virtually, I don't think, any production cards in the third age. So by that point, you need to have what you're going to be wanting to be producing each turn. But you're going to have a lot more. You have end game scoring cards. You also have guilds, which are end game scoring cards usually. And they cost a lot to build. They cost usually a wide variety of different resources, like maybe 5 or 6 different types of resources to build. And the number of guilds that you have in the deck depends on how many players are in the game. For 4 players, you have 6 guilds. And if you ever have any questions about the cards, there's 2 places where you can find descriptions. One is the back of the rule book, and the other is the back of the quick rules. So you can have 2 of these copies floating out around the table, especially if you've got 7 people playing. These can just be floating around. And they have references, specifically once you get into like the guilds and some of the more complicated age 3 cards, as to what the symbols on the cards mean, so that you know exactly what you're choosing and when you're building. So we would do exactly what we did at age 1, we would do it in age 2, and at the end of age 2 we would settle up our military differences, and then we would do age 3, and at the end of age 3 we would also settle up our military differences, and then we would count everything. And you could go in order of how it's listed on this score sheet. The first row is military, so you would count up however many military points you have, making sure to subtract for any negative ones that you have. You also get points for money. You get 1 point for every 3 coins that you have. This would be how many points you score for your wonders. So if you've gotten both of your wonders built, or all 3 of your wonders, if I had all 3 of my wonders built, I would have 10 points total. If Giza had all 3 of their wonders built, they would have 15 points total. So pretty big deal. The blue are the civilian structures, and I don't have any of those out. I think this is one. Yeah, here's an example of the civilian structure. These are things that are like benefit for the people. They're theaters, and there are statues and baths and things like that, and they're worth victory points at the end of the game. So they would be counted in that row, but he used that one to build his wonder. Then the yellow is if you have any cards that count commerce cards. You don't get automatic points for having commerce cards, but you may have a commerce card that allows you to score points. And if so, then they would be counted here. Purple is guilds, so you would count up any points you have for whatever guilds that you've built that give you endgame scoring. And green would be your science or your knowledge cards. And for the knowledge cards, you square the number of symbols that you have that are the same. So if, for instance, this guy with the tablet had, say, 3 tablets, he would get 9 points. And then he would get, if he had maybe another symbol, he would get 1 point for the other additional symbol. So that's how you score the science points. And then you add them all up. Whoever has the most points wins the game. And that is how you play 7 Wonders. It's fun. It is different every time. I like the card drafting mechanic a lot. It makes you think, so there's definitely some strategy involved, but there's also some luck depending on the cards that other people choose. You might be looking in your hand and go, man, there are 3 cards in here that I really want to build. And you know that they're going to get passed around and you're going to have to choose one. And the other ones are going to get built by other people. That's just how it works. And part of your planning strategy should also be to look at your neighbors and make sure that if you can't produce it, that you can get it from one of your neighbors. Because the last thing you want is to end up at age 3 with a wonderful guild card in your hand that you can't build because you don't have access to a loom or a glassworks or something like that. So I hope you have fun playing this game, and thanks for joining me on the Dragon Table. I'll see you next time.